everybody, this is Palm Springs Cindy, and tonight I want to talk to you about the loves of my life. And while I talk about the loves of my life, I want to create an atmosphere of you thinking about the loves of your life. I think the first time I really felt that pitter patter in my heart and tummy regarding a boy was when I was in elementary school. And I think I was probably in 5th grade. And when I was in elementary school, I went to a Catholic school called St. John Chrysostom, and it's in LA. It is like off of Crenshaw. Some of you who live in this area or did, you will probably know St. John Chrysostom. It's still there. It's big and it's beautiful. This is Palm Springs Cindy, and I want to talk to you about a personal story about the loves of my life. And I want to create the atmosphere that while I talk, I'm hoping that you recall and begin to think about the loves of your life. So I think the first time I ever had a crush on a boy was when I was actually in elementary school. And I went to a school called St. John Chrysostom, and it was in Los Angeles. I think it was on Crenshaw Boulevard. For those of you who are from the area, you may recall or know it is still there. It's a beautiful church. And school is still there. And so while I was there, we had carpools, and so it depended on whoever's week it was that was driving us to school. If it was someone's dad, they usually took us to school and dropped us off quite early because it was on their way to work. So if we were dropped off early enough to go to 8 o'clock mass, then we were expected to be in mass. So my girlfriends and I that, were in the neighborhood and were in the carpool together, we did not want to go to mass. We wanted to hang out and chit chat and just girl talk and have fun. So the nuns would come looking for us, and we would hide in the bathroom, and we would put our feet up on the toilet, and the nuns would open the stall doors and say, you girls need to get out here. And you girls need to get in mass. And we were like, oh, sister, we don't have a doily for our head. And they were like, well, put a Kleenex on top of your head and get in mass. Okay. So we would go to mass, and I sang in the choir, and there were altar boys. And the altar boys were they were like in 8th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And they were so holy and they were so adorable. Well, I ended up having a crush on an altar boy, not from my parish, not from St. John's, but from a neighboring slash rival school. And I think we got to know them because they would come in and serve mass at our church on occasions, and we would play volleyball and basketball against the rival. I think it was St. Jude's schools. So anyway, I met this guy. His name, I wrote it down. His name was Greg. And Greg, I just thought Greg was adorable. So we ended up conversing, and this is one of my earliest memories of a boyfriend, and we ended up saying to one another, let's meet at the movie theater at the picture show, because in those days, it cost 15 cents to go to the show, and you would have 4, double feature plus cartoons plus newsreels, so it took all afternoon for 15 cents, maybe 20, I don't remember, but it was not very much. And we would go across the street to Thrifty Drugstore, and you could buy 3 candy bars for 10 cents. So we would my little girlfriends and I, we'd get dropped off by one of the parents, go across, and they would say, go across the street and get your candy before you go into the movie show, because you can get 3 candies for 10 cents. So we did. We would go into the theater, and so Greg and I had made arrangements to meet one another at the show. Poppy has a toy. And so we did. We met at the show, and we sat in the very back, and we held hands. Now, I think at first he put his arm around me, And you know, that I was like, oh my God, I just got his arm around me. And then after that, you know, we held hands, and I was elated. You know, I was, oh my gosh, we were holding hands. So Greg Rosiska and I, oh my gosh, that was his last name. So we ended up being like having a crush on each other for a while. But you know, when you're in elementary school, that doesn't last very long. Plus, he didn't go to my school. We didn't get to go to the show every weekend. Okay, but that is the first boy I remember like having a flutter for. And then after that, what happened was when I was still living, you know, in Los Angeles, I was like 10, 11-ish years old. And so during the summer, one of our girlfriends' father worked at Manhattan Beach. So he would take us to the beach on his way to work. So he had to be at work like, let's say 8:39. Then he would drop us off at the beach. We would stay all day at the beach until 5 o'clock. Then he was done with work, and we'd pile in the car, and he would take us home. So I was a total beach bunny. You know, that was when the Beach Boys were hot. That was when Dick Dale and the Dale Tones were hot. That was when, you know, the Righteous Brothers, you know, that was this whole beach crowd and surfer crowd. And so I ended up meeting this boy. His name was Jim, and he was a surfer boy, and he was a couple years older than I was, because he was in junior high and I was still like in 5th or 6th grade. But I met him at the beach, and he was so cute. You know, in fact, I still have a picture of him somewhere in one of my boxes. And so we would like talk at the beach and sit next to each other at the beach and like sit and soak our legs in the water. And I was like all just so jazzed about that. Well, one night I was in bed. I was home, I was in bed. And and the phone rang. We had one phone, you know, with one of those, it was a black phone, you know, with a dial thing. Okay, you guys, what am I going to do with her? Poppy, can you please not chew that while I'm on the phone? No, you don't need to come up. So I was in bed, and we had a hall tape, in the hall, we had a little telephone table. And so the phone rang, and I wasn't quite asleep yet. It was probably 10 o'clock, 9:30. And my mom comes in. Well, first of all, before the phone rang, I was thinking about Jim, the surfer boy. Oh my gosh, so cute. I just really like him. When am I going to see him again? I have a boyfriend. So excited. Well, so then my mom goes, Cindy, telephone. I was like, what? So, and she like had her hand over the phone. She goes, it's a boy. I was like, oh my God. So I sat down, hello, and it was Jim. I couldn't believe it. So we talked, and we decided to meet at the beach. And when are you going to the beach again? Oh, I'm not sure. When are you? Okay, let's try to go. Let's try to meet, which we did. Actually, we met at a little after party, because the next time I saw him, I remember he and I were sitting in the front seat of a car together, and he was like holding my hand. I was on cloud 9. So for some reason that night we exchanged class pictures. It must have been the end of, I don't know, but I got his school picture, and I still have it. And anyway, he was, you know, when I do find it or run into it, he was just 7th or 8th grade. It's probably 7th grade. But he was darling, you know, blonde surfer hair, and so cute. So that was like my second crush. Then we moved to Mississippi, and time went by. And I ended up meeting this boy through one of my classes. I guess I was in 6th grade, he was in 7th grade, and I don't really remember his name, but I'm going to call him John, I think. Well, John, I think, he and I went to a party together, because in those days in Mississippi, even though we were in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, people had parties at their house. You know, there's nothing to do there. But people would have parties. So, for example, and for all of my Mississippi friends that might be watching this, and I know you do, Ruthie, I know you do, it was a party at Mary Beth's house. And Mary Beth was and is absolutely darling. She had this strawberry blonde hair and these doe eyes, and she was just about this big. She was absolutely adorable and so sweet and so nice. So she had a party at her house, and her mom and dad were there. But like I remember, they had like two tables lined up, or maybe one table lined up, with a punch bowl and cheese and crackers, and just little snacks. And they had a record player, I think, that was playing songs. The Beatles were not even out yet, so they were probably playing like Ricky Nelson. I don't know. And so anyway, this guy and I, Mike was his name, not John. And so Mike and I were at the party together, and I totally had a crush on him. So he was my boyfriend. And then after the party, like at school, he would leave notes in my locker, and I would like have a note waiting for him to pick up in my locker, and it would be like, do you like me? With the box yes or box no, check one. So young and innocent. Well, then he would like meet me at the after school football games. There would be little intramural football games or whatever, and we would walk over to the football field. And you could meet your boyfriend there, or your girl, whatever. And so I would meet him, and then maybe he would start walking me home or walk me partway home. So we were boyfriend and girlfriend, and I was just crazy about him. Well, then this is my first heartbreak. So then it was Halloween, and I remember we decided to meet one another at night during Halloween night, like down the street. And then like, let's go trick or treat and be with our friends, but then let's meet each other later on. Then like, you can walk me home. So I was waiting at the place where we were supposed to meet, waiting. Well, so finally, nothing was happening, and it was dark, and it was late Halloween. So some of my friends, I saw a group of my friends, and they were like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm waiting for Mike." And they were like, Mike who? And I told him, I forget his last name, and I told him. They go, "Oh, don't you know?" I'm like, "No, what?" They go, "Oh, he has another girlfriend." I'm like, "What?" They go, "Oh yeah, he has another girlfriend." You're not his girlfriend anymore. So I was devastated. So anyway, I walked home by myself, and I got in bed, and I had the biggest broken heart. And the song came on, "Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying." So and I had a record player in my room. So I had that record, and I played it. Oh, no, it wasn't my record player. It was on the radio. As soon as I got in bed, "Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying." I just cried my heart out. So that was my big, that was probably my first heartbreak. That creepy guy. And then, as years went by, whatever. And it was really nice in Mississippi, because what happened is there would be parties, but it would be like groups of people. So groups of gals, groups of guys, whatever grade, whoever you hung out with, we would go and there would be parties out like on the sand dunes or in the forest or someplace. You didn't have to have a party at someone's house. You could have it outdoors. And as long as there was an electrical outlet or a long enough extension cord, there were actually bands. In fact, one band is still very popular. I think they're called, I can't remember what they're called. But they played, when we were all in high school and stuff, but they're still playing. And so, we would just have fun. We would dance, and I think maybe there were bonfires, whatever. So then I met this guy who became my real boyfriend, and his name was Ralph. And Ralph and I dated. He's the one I went to the prom with. He's the one that I dated. He's the one. So some of my girlfriends all had boyfriends, and he was my boyfriend. So then we did stuff together. And when I say we did stuff together, there were little. Mississippi was a dry state, and so in the '60s, there were bootleggers. And so all of us kids, of course, we knew how to get to the bootleggers. So, we would either go to the bootleggers and buy beer, whatever. But then there were also little cafes, like there was the Red Top Cafe. there was different cafes, and so even though we weren't old enough to go in, we parked in the parking lot, and so there would be like, you know how they have tailgate parties now? It would be like big tailgate parties, and we'd hang out in the cars, and the music would play, and the guys would buy beer and stuff. So that was that's what we did, and so I went out with Ralph, and sometimes we drove to New Orleans and or to Biloxi, and so we did have fun, and there were lots of like, I'm going to say lakes, big Natchez River, or the big lake. I forget the name of it, but it was huge, and the reservoir. And so a lot of people had boats, pontoon boats, and the kids would, the parents would say, go on and take the pontoon boat out. So we'd go on the boat and, jump in the lake and get wet. And, so anyway, there were fun things to do. And Ralph was my boyfriend. Well, then Ralph and I broke up. And I was sad because I think I was a junior, maybe almost a senior. Well, anyway, so I did not have a boyfriend. Well, then I met another guy who was totally the love of my life, and his name was Ron Hudson. He was from Jackson, but actually from, he went to Hines College, junior college, when I met him, and I can't remember the city he was from, Oxford, or anyway, he was adorable, and he was such a nice guy, and I really, really liked him. So he and I dated, and we had fun stuff. We went down to the Mississippi River. We got on boats, and we sailed on the boat. Don't ask me. Maybe he knew someone that had the boat. I don't know. I actually have pictures of that. And we used to listen. He was being raised. He was in junior college. I was still in high school, but he was living with his father, a single father who was probably quite young, and his father probably was dating. And so his father would leave, and Ron and I would go into his father's home, and we would listen to Ray Charles albums, Ray Charles song after song after song, and make out, and we were just boyfriend and girlfriend. So when I finally moved back to California, Ron and I were still dating, and in fact, after we got settled and I graduated high school, Ron was finished with that year at his junior college in Mississippi. So Ron actually drove my older sister back to California. And then I was able to be with Ron, and he stayed with my family and I until my parents were thinking we're getting way too serious. And so my dad just gave Ron the what for and said, you need to leave. My daughter's way too young, and you guys are very serious, and so you need to get back to Mississippi, and if this is true love, it will last, and you'll figure it out. Well, he went back to Mississippi because he had to, and I was just so forlorn, and my dad just said, I don't care if I have to nail your windows down. You are not going to see him again. You are going to grow up a little bit, and if you still care about him, then you guys can work it out. God, what am I going to do? So anyway, that was the last of Ron. And to tell you the truth, I would love to know where Ron Hudson is today. So if anybody happens to know, please let me know. I would love to find him. So then, then I moved. I went to college, and I had a boyfriend when then I got to college, Riverside City College. I was there a year. I didn't have a boyfriend, didn't know really that many people. Joined a sorority. And once I joined a sorority, then I started meeting gals and started meeting guys. And one of the gentlemen that I met, his name was Budge. His nickname was Budge. And so Budge and I started dating, and that was like a year and a half of just date and proms and all that kind of stuff. So we had fun. He was student body president. I was student body secretary. It was just a fun time, a very eye-opening time, because it was in the late 60s. So anyway, after that, we broke up. He went away to college, and then I went away to college, a different college, so we broke up. And that was all good. And then when I went away to San Diego State, I didn't really know anybody. Once again, I'm new to campus, and I thought about rushing a sorority because the sorority had been so good to me in junior college. But I was a transfer junior, and I was kind of over the sorority thing. So what I ended up doing was I became what they call a little sister to the crew team. And the crew team, oh my gosh, they were these gorgeous guys, beachy guys, hunky guys. And so we were the crew team's little sisters, and our job was to go to their practices, go to their regattas, and make sure we brought them Gatorade and sliced oranges, and had plenty of ice and cold water. And we did, we every day, almost every couple days a week, we would go to the Bay, San Diego Bay, and they would be finishing their row practice, and we would be there. We actually even had little uniforms that we made. And the guys were so nice. And so then the guys were very, very healthy. And this was a time where drugs were quite prevalent. But because they were athletic and because they wanted to, have the edge being on the crew team, they were not into drugs at all. Because they were not into drugs, I was never into drugs. That was not my scene. So, like I said, part of being a little sister was we went on their regattas, and we would travel up the coast to the beaches and be there when they arrived. And anyway, we had so much fun. But the guys would throw parties like crazy, and they would have, in those days, nobody had any money. We were all starving students, but they would make a big sink. They put like a big trash baggie in the sink, and they would make that wine that has all that fruit in it. I forget the name of it, all that cheap red wine. And they'd put in oranges and apples and grapes and whatever else they could put in, and ice. And so, we just dunk our glasses in there, and that would be our drink. Or they would have beer. Beer on tap or something. And so that's, we would do that maybe on a party weekend. So eventually, I met a lot of guys through the crew team, but I didn't really date anybody special. Not that I don't know, I just didn't date anybody special, but I did end up finding a boyfriend named John. And John, I'm not sure maybe John was from one of my classes. And I had the biggest crush on John. He was darling, and he was fun, and he and his buddies and me and their dates, we would go to Mexico to the bullfights. And actually, I had a girlfriend her name was Kathy, and Kathy and I hung around together, and she dated some friends of John's. Anyway, we were kind of like a little group, and we would go to Mexico, and we would go down there, because I wasn't 21, but you could drink down there. So we would have margaritas, we would go to the bullfights, we'd go to highlight games. So, that was really fun. And so, but John and I eventually, John was not really, what's that saying? He's not that into you. He was into me for a while, but then he was not that into me. So we ended up kind of partying. But he later came back to me and said, I really think I like you. And I was like, well, too late, because I have another boyfriend. So then I ended up moving to Palm Springs. And then I was a second grade teacher, and I was a new second grade teacher, and there was a new kindergarten teacher named Joy. Well, Joy, even though she was new at Rancho Mirage Elementary School with me, she actually was born and raised in the desert. So she was really an OG of Palm Springs. And so she was the one that fixed me up with, actually, what happened? We would, once again, that was in the 70s in Palm Springs. So this is what we used to do, young single people. We would we worked all day, my girlfriends and I, we were teachers. And then after school, we would go to the gym. And then after the gym, we were hungry. So we would go to wherever there was like a happy hour. And there were two places that we frequented quite a bit. One of them was the Hungry Tiger. And the Hungry Tiger had what they called a basement area. And down in the basement, they had a jukebox, and they had tables with like red and white tablecloths, and they had peanuts where you just ate the peanuts through the shells on the floor, popcorn machine. And so it was very casual and not very expensive. So a lot of us would go there after school, like on our way home, because I taught at Rancho Mirage Elementary School, which was about a good 45 minutes from where I actually lived in Palm Springs. So on our way home, we would stop at Hungry Tiger and have a beer or whatever. And then another place that we used to go, being young singles in Palm Springs in the 70s, was the Cask and Cleaver restaurant. And on Thursday nights, they had happy hour, and they had a beautiful buffet of teriyaki chicken and whatever else. And so you could have, you could go to the buffet, fill up your plate, and then order a cocktail. And well, we made dinner out of that and probably put some in our purse for breakfast the next morning. So when I was there, I met one of the waiters, a really nice guy named Craig. Craig, I don't know if you watch me, but if you do, hi. And so Craig and I started dating, and we dated for a couple years. We had fun together, and then I ended up meeting my husband. And so once I met Dana, then Dana and I just started going out. So then he turned out to be my husband for 43 years. And some of you have recently said, do you want to talk about that? And I really don't, and I'm not. So anyway, those are the loves of my life. Now, of course, now I'm single and whatever. I've had a few more loves, I'll say. But, obviously I'm still single, so nothing very serious. Who are the loves of your life? Who are the names, the men that you think about? I don't care how young you were. You could have been in elementary school, middle school, doesn't matter. Who was the first young man or boy or gentleman that made your heart go pitter-pat? The first crush to the last crush. So I want to hear about your stories. So let me know in the comments. P.S. I love you. Mwah. Until our next conversation. Bye-bye.